The hidden reason ambitious people secretly self-sabotage. Carl Jung, have you ever wondered why some of the most ambitious, driven, and seemingly capable people are also the ones who crash hardest? Not because the world stops them, but because they somehow stop themselves right at the edge of breakthrough. This video isn't about toxic motivation or hustle culture. It's about the deeper truth. The hidden reason ambitious people self-sabotage, drawn from the psychological depths of Carl Jung and echoed in every person who has ever tried to climb too high too fast. Let's open with a question that might haunt you. What if the very thing you think you want most in life is the thing you're unconsciously terrified of achieving? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That quote isn't just a poetic flourish, it's a bombshell. It means that most of what rules you, your patterns, your fears, even your goals, might not be coming from a place of awareness. They might come from a shadow. And it's that shadow, your inner psychological underworld, that often holds the key to understanding why you keep tripping over your own success.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
When we talk about ambition, we usually think of it as a force pulling us forward, a rocket fuel. But what if ambition has two faces? One that inspires you to act, and another that secretly fears what happens if you actually succeed. Because success is confrontation with responsibility, with visibility, with change, with your own transformation. And transformation at its root is death, the death of who you were. Ambition is the fire, but inside that fire lives a question. Are you truly ready to become someone else? See, self-sabotage isn't just laziness. It's not weakness. It's not a lack of willpower. It's often a kind of psychic rebellion. Your unconscious, the part of you that Jung would call the shadow, has its own agenda. It wants safety, familiarity, and it doesn't trust the new you you're trying to become. So every time you push forward, it pulls you back, not out of hatred, but out of protection. It remembers the childhood moment where you were punished for shining too brightly. It remembers the pain of being rejected. It remembers when standing out meant standing alone. So it buries those memories deep until the day you're about to launch the business, publish the book, enter the relationship, or take the stage. And then it whispers, "Are you sure?" This whisper is subtle. It hides behind procrastination, behind perfectionism, behind burnout. You'll call it being busy. You'll call it not feeling ready. But it's not about time. It's about identity. You are trying to reach a future that your past doesn't believe in. And so, like a deep-sea creature resisting the sun, your psyche pulls you back into the dark. Because in the dark, at least you know who you are. Jung believed that the shadow isn't evil, it's just rejected, forgotten. It holds the parts of ourselves we've been told not to be. Too loud, too confident, too different. For ambitious people, this often includes the fear of being powerful. Yes, fear of power. Not fear of failure, but of what happens if you actually win. Because if you win, then people expect more. You lose the right to hide. You must step into the light. And light is where your wounds are visible. Ask yourself, what would I lose if I actually became who I say I want to be? That question might unearth more than you expect, because we often build our ambition on top of a wound. We say, I want to be rich, but secretly we mean, I want to prove I'm not worthless. We say, I want to be famous, but the shadow says, I want to be loved, finally. And here's the paradox. If the goal is built on a wound, achieving it doesn't heal the wound, it exposes it. You get the money, but still feel empty. You get the followers, but still feel unseen. And then comes the spiral, the sabotage, because you finally realize, this success didn't save me, so maybe I never deserved it. Maybe I'm a fraud. And so you pull the plug, quietly. You ghost the opportunity. You delay the launch. You change your vision. But deep down, you're not changing your dream, you're running from the ghost inside it. The only way out is through. You must meet your shadow. Not to fight it, but to understand it. Jung called this process individuation, the integration of all parts of the self, including the dark. It's not a quick fix. It's not sexy. But it's the only path to sustainable ambition. Because when you know your shadow, it can no longer control you. So let's sit with this. What if your ambition is not just a goal, but a mirror? a reflection of all the parts of you that are still trying to prove they're enough. That mirror can be terrifying, but it can also be liberating, because once you see it clearly, you can choose a different game. Not the game of proving, but the game of becoming, of serving, of creating. You stop climbing a ladder to escape yourself and start building a foundation to become your truest self. We're just getting started. In the next part, we'll go deeper into the paradox of the fear of becoming who you're meant to be, why your higher self is also your greatest threat to your unconscious survival, and how to navigate this inner war without destroying your potential. The fear of becoming who you're meant to be. Let's go deeper now, beyond surface-level motivation, beyond the idea that success is just a matter of discipline. What we're about to explore is the psychological paradox that ruins more potential than failure ever could. It's the fear of becoming who you're meant to be. Not fear of incompetence, but fear of the staggering responsibility that comes with power, clarity, and inner alignment. And this fear is not irrational. It's ancient. It's buried in your nervous system, your mythologies, your very soul. Because to become your full self means to destroy the version of you that was built to survive, not thrive. Carl Jung observed that the most terrifying thing a person can do is confront their own potential. Not because they doubt it's real, but because they sense how radically it would change everything. We say we want to grow, but we rarely admit what growth actually demands. It demands disloyalty to your past self. It demands that you betray the version of you that kept you safe by staying small. That's not easy. That's war. And most of us are secretly loyal to our wounds, more than to our dreams. Think about this. We all carry an internal image of ourselves, a self-concept that feels familiar, even if it's painful. Maybe you've always seen yourself as the underdog, or the quiet one, or the fixer, or the outsider. These identities are forged in childhood, shaped by survival, and they become comfortable cages. So when life gives you the opportunity to transcend them, to be seen in a new light, to take up more space, to lead instead of follow, there's a part of you that panics. Because if I'm not the underdog anymore, who am I? If I'm no longer broken, what excuse do I have to hide? Jung would argue that this identity crisis is not a failure of ambition, it's a confrontation with the self, capital S. The self is the totality of who you are, not just the personality you perform. It includes the shadow, the ego, the unconscious, the divine. And meeting it is like meeting a god. You feel awe. You feel fear. Because the self doesn't care about your ego's comfort. It wants you to become whole. And wholeness is dangerous to the parts of you that depend on being fragmented. This is why self-sabotage often kicks in right before a breakthrough. Because the closer you get to your true power, the more your old identity fights for survival. It whispers doubts. It looks for exit ramps. It sabotages relationships, projects, consistency. Not because you're weak, but because you're at the edge of transformation. And transformation always looks like death to the ego. So ask yourself this: what will I have to let go of in order to become who I could be? Maybe it's the comfort of being underestimated. Maybe it's the safety of being liked. Maybe it's the identity of the one who always helps others but never needs help. Maybe it's the illusion of being broken. Whatever it is, the price of becoming your higher self is the death of who you thought you were. And that death hurts. It's why people stay in unfulfilling jobs, toxic relationships, mediocre versions of themselves, because the pain of the known is often less terrifying than the freedom of the unknown. But here's the truth. You are not your trauma. You are not your self-doubt. You are not the story you wrote to survive. You are the author. You can write a new one. But you can't do it without grieving the old one. This grief is sacred. It's the threshold between who you were and who you're becoming. Jung called this process the night sea journey, a descent into the unconscious, where you meet not only your darkness, but your hidden gold. Most people avoid this journey, but if you're watching this, maybe you're ready. Maybe the pain of staying the same has finally outweighed the fear of changing. Here's a question to sit with. If nothing in your life needed to stay the same, who would you choose to become? In the next part, we'll explore how perfectionism is often a mask for deep spiritual fear, and how never being ready is a form of psychological armor that protects you from the unbearable vulnerability of being truly seen. Perfectionism is fear wearing a mask. Perfectionism is one of the most socially acceptable forms of self-sabotage. It wears a clean face. It sounds responsible, even admirable. We praise the perfectionist for their high standards, their discipline, their attention to detail. But beneath that polished surface lies something far more primal. Fear. Not just fear of failure, but fear of exposure. Fear of vulnerability. Fear that if we ever allowed our real, imperfect selves to be seen by the world, it would reject us entirely. Perfectionism is not a virtue, it's fear in a tailored suit. Carl Jung wouldn't have called it perfectionism. He might have called it a defense mechanism of the ego, a psychological armor designed to protect the fragile self-image that we've spent years constructing. Perfectionism says, if I can just do everything flawlessly, they won't see how flawed I really am. It's a strategy of invisibility, because perfection isn't about expression, it's about control. And control is the opposite of authenticity. Why do ambitious people fall into this trap? Because we tend to equate achievement with identity. We're taught, often from a young age, that love is conditional. Perform well, get approval. Fail, get ignored, criticized, or worse. Over time, we internalize the belief that we are only as valuable as our output. So we stop taking risks. We stop creating freely. We only act when we're certain we won't fail. And when that certainty never comes, we freeze. We procrastinate. We endlessly revise. We wait for the perfect idea, the perfect timing, the perfect version of ourselves. But that moment never arrives, because perfection is a horizon always visible, never reachable. This is how perfectionism becomes spiritual paralysis. We tell ourselves we're waiting until we're ready, but ready becomes a prison. The spiritual fear underneath isn't just about being judged, it's about being seen. Because to truly be seen, flaws and all, is unbearably intimate. It strips away the mask. And if people reject that version of us, the raw, real, exposed self, then what are we left with? The illusion of perfection lets us avoid that risk. It gives us an escape hatch. They didn't reject me, we tell ourselves. They just never saw the finished version. But what if the unfinished version is the only real one? This is where Jung's idea of the persona becomes essential. The persona is the social mask we wear to function in the world. It's necessary. But when we start believing the persona is who we are, we lose touch with the deeper self, the messy, creative, contradictory self. And here's the paradox. The more perfect your persona, the more suffocating your inner life becomes. Because behind the scenes, you're hiding the parts of yourself that actually hold your genius, your creativity, your humanity, the shadow. Perfectionism is terrified of the shadow, because the shadow contains everything the perfectionist has been told to suppress. Spontaneity, wildness, mistakes, failure, even joy. Yes, joy is terrifying to the perfectionist, because joy is unpredictable. It's not earned. It's not controlled. It just is. And so we suppress it. We work ourselves into exhaustion. We polish every detail. We delay our dreams, all to avoid the terror of being fully, imperfectly alive. Here's a raw question. What dream are you postponing in the name of being not ready? Think about it. The book you haven't written, the business you haven't launched, the love you haven't let in, the art you haven't shared. What if your delay isn't about strategy, but shame? What if your desire for perfection is really a fear of being seen as enough, exactly as you are now? Jung teaches us that healing comes not from becoming better, but from becoming whole. That means integrating the parts of yourself you've exiled in the name of perfection. The part that makes mistakes, the part that's scared, the part that doesn't know what it's doing. These parts aren't weaknesses, they're doorways to courage, to authenticity, to connection. When you embrace them, you no longer need to be perfect. You only need to be real. In the final part, we'll explore the ultimate paradox, how the fear of success can be even more destabilizing than the fear of failure, and why embracing your full power is the most terrifying and liberating act you'll ever commit. The success wound. Why winning feels like losing. Here's the final paradox, the one most people never talk about because it doesn't make sense on the surface. Why is it that some of us finally get what we always wanted: success, recognition, freedom, and instead of feeling triumphant, we feel lost, anxious, even empty? Why does winning sometimes feel like losing? This is what I call the success wound. And it's one of the most misunderstood psychological and spiritual crises an ambitious person can face. You work for years toward a goal. You sacrifice sleep, relationships, comfort. You push. You grind. You visualize. You become obsessed with the moment you finally arrive. And then, one day, you do. You get the job, the deal, the book deal, the audience, the money. And yet, something inside you recoils. Instead of celebration, there's anxiety. Instead of freedom, pressure. You start to question everything. Why don't I feel the way I thought I would? Why does this feel so fragile? Why don't I feel safe here? Carl Jung would say this is the moment when the ego is forced to confront the illusion that success could ever solve the deeper hunger of the soul. Because true wholeness doesn't come from external achievement. It comes from integration of the shadow, the inner child, the unconscious. But for years, we've used success as a distraction, a way to avoid that inner confrontation, a way to silence the voice that says, "I'm still not enough." And when success no longer drowns that voice out, it actually makes it louder, because now the stakes are higher. We feel like we have more to lose, more people to disappoint, more image to maintain. And so we start to sabotage, quietly, subtly. We become less creative, less present. We overthink. We burn out. We alienate people. Not because we're bad or broken, but because part of us still believes we don't deserve to be here. That this success belongs to someone else. That we're just pretending, and soon everyone will find out. This is the imposter syndrome, yes, but it goes deeper. It's not just about doubting your qualifications. It's about a core identity that still sees itself as unworthy of love, belonging, and power. And the more success shines a spotlight on you, the more exposed that unworthiness feels. Ask yourself this: what part of me believes that success is unsafe? Maybe it's the part that was punished for standing out. The part that was told, "Don't get too big for your britches." The part that was abandoned when it shined too brightly. These wounds don't disappear just because you achieved something. In fact, success brings them to the surface, because now you're forced to live without the excuse of someday. You're here. And if here doesn't feel good, then what does that mean? Jung invites us to see this not as a failure, but as an initiation. The success wound is a spiritual threshold. It's life saying, "You've mastered the outer world. Now it's time to master the inner one." It's an invitation to shift your focus from proving to becoming, from achievement to embodiment, from performance to presence. Real success, the kind that doesn't crumble under its own weight, comes from aligning who you are with what you do. It's when your inner world is spacious enough to hold your outer expansion. It's when you don't just have success, you feel it. You live it. You let it flow through you, without fear of losing it, because it's no longer tied to your identity. So here's the final question. If everything you've ever wanted came true tomorrow, would you feel safe in it? Or would you subconsciously try to burn it down? The hidden reason ambitious people self-sabotage is not failure. It's the terrifying possibility of truly succeeding and realizing that success demands a new version of you. A version who is no longer defined by striving, but by being. A version who is no longer running from their shadow, but walking with it. A version who is whole. That version is already inside you, waiting, not for you to be perfect, but for you to be honest, to be willing, to be brave enough to stop hiding, especially from yourself. And maybe that's the real win.